Hi, I'm Sam Slater from Fund Caliber, and today I've been joined by Cormac Weldon, manager of the Artemis US Smaller Companies Fund. Hi, Cormac.
Hello, good morning.
So the US stock market's performance of late has been all about the big tech stocks, the Facebooks, the Amazons, etc. But you've managed to outperform the wider S&P 500 index year to date with this small cap fund. How have you managed to do that? What stocks have done particularly well?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that the very large tech stocks get a lot of the headlines, but in the smaller companies fund, there have been lots of opportunities year to date. Our best performer has been a company that supplies spare parts for swimming pools, believe it or not. It just happens to be extremely good at it. It's the biggest company in that sector, in that business, and has done very well from people being at home during the crisis and perhaps thinking maybe we better have a swimming pool. So Pool Corporation has been one of our best performers. And another I'll talk about later is Pinterest, the social media company, which again is very interesting because it's done extremely well despite, or maybe perhaps because the larger companies have done well as well. I think the point I'd make is lots of these smaller companies are overlooked and therefore there's lots of opportunity there.
The US is in recession at the moment, so is it a good or a bad time to be buying smaller companies?
Well, that depends on whether you believe we're coming out of recession and we've got economic growth ahead of us, which is what we believe. US economy is growing quite nicely now. More people are getting jobs. Industrial production is going up, and consumers actually have a lot of cash. They've saved the benefits they got from the government during the crisis, full stop. So smaller companies tend to be a very good way of investing because they're almost wholly domestic companies and they benefit from the stimulus that the government and the Federal Reserve are pouring into the economy.
And you mentioned Pinterest just a little earlier, but could you perhaps talk us through the rationale for a couple of the companies in your fund? There's Pinterest, the pool company you mentioned, and also an RV company I see you've invested in recently.
Yeah, so certainly one of the themes that we've invested in is people changing how they spend and what they spend money on. I don't know if you remember, but last year and in the years before, it was all about experiences. So people talking about taking cruises. Now, obviously, during the crisis, that spending mentality has changed very significantly. And I mentioned Pool Corporation, people sinking a pool in their garden and wanting to spend more on their home. You're right, we own BRP, which is a Canadian company which makes recreational vehicles like skidoos and off-terrain four-wheelers. And again, it's just a symptom of, first of all, the US consumer has quite a bit of cash at the moment. And secondly, they're spending money on things they can do at home or close to home. And obviously, and perhaps this isn't foremost in their thoughts in a socially distant way. So yes, that has done well as well.
And finally, we're just a couple of weeks away from the US election, and without wanting to predict the unpredictable, could you perhaps talk us through what a Trump win might mean and what a Biden win might mean for small caps in the short term, or if actually in the long term it doesn't really matter who's in the Oval Office?
Well, I think there's more difference between the two contenders in this election than there's been since before we heard of Donald Trump as a presidential candidate. So for a Trump win, I think he will continue his policy of deregulation. He would continue with a low taxation environment for smaller companies. And both of those are actually quite stimulative to economic growth. And not everything Donald Trump says is an exaggeration. The economy was doing well up until the crisis. And I would expect that to continue. I think like a Biden victory, there's likely to be significant stimulus as soon as, arguably as soon as the election's over, perhaps, if not after the new president takes the White House, which brings us to Biden. I think in the early stages, it would also be very good for the domestic economy. Lots of spending. We've heard about the Green New Deal, which is really trying to expand the usage of renewable energy. It's at least partly about that. So that would take a lot of money that would go into the economy. Medium term, and we think it is medium term, there is the prospect of the Democrats, a Biden-led government, raising taxes. And that would fall on small companies. We think that's probably would have an impact in 2022, but that will be something we'll be watching closely if Biden were to win and if the Democrats were to win the Senate.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Not at all. Thank you.
And if you'd like to find out more about the Artemis US Smaller Companies Fund, please go to fundcalibre.com.